You think you've seen courage, wait until you witness what happened the day a shy new girl walked into Ridgeview High, and the moment her dress was ripped by bullies. The entire hallway froze, because the man who stepped between her and cruelty was no ordinary protector, he was a Navy SEAL. Before you dive into this shocking, emotional, twist-packed story, make sure to subscribe for more unbelievable real-life, style stories that hit harder than truth itself. Ridgeview High had always been a place where the loud ruled over the quiet, and nothing proved that more than the day shy new girl Alara Jennings walked through its doors. Clutching her books like a shield and hoping, praying, that this school would be different from all the others she had bounced through after moving from town to town with her uncle, a man she adored but who never spoke much about his past. What neither the students nor teachers knew, however, was that beneath his calm blue eyes and quiet smile lived a history carved in fire, ocean, and war, the kind only a Navy SEAL could understand. And that history was about to explode into the halls of Ridgeview. Alara was delicate in the way that made cruel people itch, big soft eyes, long dark hair that slipped over her shoulders like a curtain she could hide behind, and a silence that seemed to offend those who thrived on attention, so naturally. It was only a matter of time before Brielle Dalton, queen of the hallways and born from money, influence, and the unchecked arrogance of someone who had always gotten away with everything, decided that she didn't like Alara. It began with whispers, "Why does she dress like that? She thinks she's better than us. Look at her, so awkward." And Alara heard them, every single one, but pretended she didn't, because that was the only way she knew to survive. Her uncle, Commander Mason Jennings, had told her the night before school started, "Kiddo, people bark loud when they fear their own silence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for who you are," but she wasn't him. She wasn't strong, trained, or fearless, she was just someone who wanted to disappear. But on Friday morning, everything changed. Brielle and her two satellites, Kara and Jonah, cornered Alara near the stairwell where the cameras didn't reach, where the echoes of shoes swallowed anything resembling a cry for help. Brielle's voice dripped with the venom of entitlement as she stepped forward and said, "New girl, do you even own a mirror? That dress looks like something out of a thrift store dumpster." Alara's cheeks burned but she whispered, "Please, just let me go," which only fueled Brielle's grin. "Ah, look, she talks," Kara sneered. Jonah chuckled, grabbing Alara's bag and tossing it down the stairs. "Oops." Alara gasped, reaching instinctively for her bag, but Brielle blocked her path. "Not so fast. We're not done," she said before her fingers snapped around the fabric of Alara's dress, then with a vicious tug, there was a cruel RIP that echoed louder than any scream Alara could have mustered. The dress tore down the seam, exposing the camisole underneath, and Alara froze, her face crumbling, humiliation swallowing her whole. Silence fell, but only for a heartbeat, because footsteps sounded behind them, steady, controlled, the kind of steps that belonged to someone who knew how to move quietly but powerfully, and when Brielle turned, her smirk faltered. Standing there was Mason Jennings, Alara's uncle, though the students didn't know that yet. All they saw was a tall man with a jaw cut like stone, shoulders broad enough to cast a shadow over all three bullies. And eyes that didn't burn with anger but with something far more terrifying, absolute, lethal calm. "Step away from her," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of a command forged in battlefields far from any school. Brielle opened her mouth to snarl back, she always snarled back, but the words dissolved in her throat because Mason stepped forward not with aggression but with controlled precision, assessing the scene in a single sweep. He removed his jacket in one smooth motion and wrapped it around Alara's shoulders, gently, protectively, before turning his full attention on the trio. "What you just did," he said, kneeling to pick up the torn piece of fabric with slow deliberation, "is not bullying. This is assault." The hallway seemed to shrink around his words. Jonah swallowed hard. "We were just messing around. Do I look like someone who tolerates messing around with a child's dignity?" Mason asked, raising an eyebrow, and in that moment something entirely new sliced through the air, fear from the bullies, but also curiosity, because who was this man who spoke like a storm disguised as still water? "Who even are you?" Brielle snapped, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her bravado. Mason held her gaze without blinking. "I'm the man you should pray you never cross again," he said simply, then added, "and Alara's guardian." The color drained from Brielle's face. More students drifted closer, whispering, some filming, because the sight of their school's reigning bully shrinking under the stare of a man who radiated absolute authority was something they'd never forget. "You'll all come with me," Mason ordered, gesturing down the hall. "We're going to the principal's office." Brielle opened her mouth in one last attempt to regain control. "You can't tell us what," but Mason stepped closer, just enough that she felt the pressure of his presence, not touching her, not threatening her, but reminding her of a universal truth: some people are not to be tested. "Walk," he said, and they walked. Word spread through the school like wildfire. "Did you see that man? He looks like military." He picked up Brielle's phone without even flinching. "In the principal's office, Mr." Carmichael looked up, startled, as Mason entered with the three trembling bullies and Alara wrapped in his jacket. "Explain," the principal demanded, and Mason did, calmly, clearly, with the precision of someone who had testified before military courts. Brielle tried to twist the narrative, but every time she lied, Mason cut through it with a single sentence that made her flinch. "Mr." Carmichael declared immediate suspension pending review, but the real punishment came when Mason leaned down and said to the bullies, "You should be grateful I'm only a guardian today. Not a SEAL." Those words followed them for weeks. But the story didn't end there, because something else began that day. Alara, who had spent years believing she was weak, saw what protection looked like, and something inside her shifted. Mason, meanwhile, realized that no matter how many missions he had survived overseas, raising a hurting teenage girl might be the battle he had been least prepared for, but also the one he was most determined to win. But twists were coming, dark ones. Brielle, humiliated, wasn't done. Her father, a wealthy businessman with connections he believed made him untouchable, stormed into the school the next week, demanding Mason's arrest for intimidation. But Mason, anticipating the move, had already submitted the security footage he collected from nearby hallway cameras, footage Brielle didn't know existed. The frame clearly captured her ripping Alara's dress, Jonah throwing her bag, and Kara shoving her. The complaint flipped back on the Daltons instantly. But the biggest twist came when Brielle, desperate to regain her social throne, discovered a secret she had no idea how to handle. Mason had been part of an elite classified unit, one whose existence wasn't supposed to be public. And when she tried to leak this information online, she unknowingly triggered a federal alert. 2 agents showed up at her home that night, informing her stunned parents that tampering with classified military personnel information was a federal offense. Brielle broke down, finally realizing she had crossed a line far beyond high school cruelty. Meanwhile, Alara, once timid, once afraid, began to rise. She joined self-defense classes Mason taught, learned how to stand, speak, and walk without shrinking, and within months the girl whose dress had been ripped became someone who no one dared touch, not because of her uncle, but because of the fire she discovered in herself. And when graduation day came, Mason watched from the bleachers as she gave a speech about courage, not the loud, flashy kind, but the kind that shakes quietly until it grows strong enough to roar. The entire gym rose to its feet. Even Brielle, sitting with her head bowed, clapped softly, knowing she had once tried to break that very girl. Later, Alara hugged Mason and whispered, "I'm strong because you stepped in." Mason smiled, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "No, kiddo. I stepped in once. You stepped up every day after." And that was the real ending, not a Navy SEAL saving a shy girl, but a shy girl becoming someone who needed no saving ever again.